gonna cover, installing new packages. We'll do that next week. Yes, hope everybody realizes it's a two-part class, so you gotta get back next week to get the rest of the class.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, sorry, that's right, the 20th. So,
But next week is our monthly meeting.
monthly meeting is next Monday, regular meeting.
Where
But,
is that?
excuse me,
Where is that?
the extension office right behind us, Washington County Extension Office, the second Monday of every month. Second Monday. Yep. And what I want to talk about real quick is, there's a lot of new beekeepers here. Just how many people are planning on getting bees this spring? All right, good deal. Y'all got to come back next week, or the week after next, sorry, and we'll talk about installing your bees and the options. But I will say, since we're not going to cover that, I was going to talk about it now. But you have two options. It's buy packages or buy nukes. You'll see a lot of people, you can mail order packaged bees. 3 pounds of bees come in the mail. Comes in a box, looks like this.
Queen
Been a lot of
may or may
fun.
not.
We'll cover that in detail. The other is the nuke. You'll find most of the local producers are providing nukes that you can pick up and install into your hive. But what I want to talk about first, and the first decision you have to make, is where you're going to locate your hives. There's a lot of things to consider, obviously, but this is kind of the traditional, you want to put it close to a water source, but not in the floodplain. Make sure there's good drainage, be a windbreak, dappled sunlight. It took me a while to figure out what dappled sunlight meant, but that just means.
When you say water source, how far?
They're gonna go to the nearest water source, so if you don't provide them one, they're gonna find one. And if you're in town, they're gonna find your neighbor's pool first, not something else, and then your neighbor's not gonna be happy with you. So, it can be, it doesn't have to be right next to the hive. I mean, my main property is probably.
2 blocks?
2 blocks is fine. I can throw a rock and hit my neighbor's pond, and that's their main water source. But another neighbor a little farther away is a pool, so they're gonna go where they can get water.
Forage up to 3 miles.
The dappled sunlight, if you're gonna put them in, if you have to decide whether the shade or the sun, put them in the sun. You're gonna have less problems with beetles, with parasites. Full sun is much better than, if you can get midday shade, and I mean midday only, great. You want them facing kind of the south, I think I got some details here. South to southeast, so the morning sun hits the entrance, it gets them up and moving around a little quicker, they can get up and get out. Windbreak's important. Bright sun, as I just talked about, you're gonna have less problems. You're not gonna like the full sunlight in July when you're trying to harvest honey. And you've got your suit on and you're all loaded up. But the bees are gonna like it and you're gonna have less problem with parasites and small hive beetles. We talked about water source, floodplains, and I think someone mentioned earlier livestock. You just don't want, the cows will rub on the boxes and then you're gonna have a big problem. Horses, same thing. But also be sure to think of yourself, because all this bee stuff gets heavy. And there tends to be a lot more of it than you think there should be over time. You saw all the tools up here. Just make it somewhere where it's easy to access. You've got a way to get to it. You also want to observe the hive. You want to be able to look out, or at least drive by and see that, there's a robbing situation going on that you need to deal with, or something needs to be done. But you want to be able to see them. Obviously safety, make sure you're not putting it around other people or in other people's way. It might need to be accessing the land. Also, when you're thinking about locating a hive, in Arkansas, we have what's called the 3 mile law. And what that means is, it's kind of weird, if you own the property, you can put as many hives on your property as you want to. If you're putting hives on somebody else's property, in other words, the property owner is not the one who's managing the hives, then anybody within you have to have their permission. If there's anybody else keeping bees within a 3 mile radius, they can object. And that comes up. In fact, we had a club member who, I won't mention names, but had to invoke that law because they were actually breeding queens in a particular area. And one of their neighbors invited some people to put hives in that yard messed up his queen rearing operation. And the state inspector went out and explained to the property owner and the hive owner that you gotta go. So people's feelings got hurt. I want you to know the rules are there. So when you're thinking about placing hives, if you're gonna place them on somebody else's property, just be aware of that. I know that that's a concern. Also, think of your neighbors. You can see this guy. He's got a hive right there by the playground. Probably a bad idea. I keep my hives. I've got 4 hives in my backyard, which is just right off my back porch. And me and the kids, we like to play wiffle ball there in the backyard. My wife mows the grass, and she's about 6 inches from the hive entrance. I weed eat around my bees. It's not a problem. I think my wife's been stung twice, so. And I don't think I've ever been stung weed eating. You just learn, you just gotta move. You gotta move fast, you gotta keep moving. Don't slow down, just keep moving. But you could freak out your neighbors, obviously. So, be sure to keep kids and phobias in mind, because you're gonna have some neighbors that are just not gonna get it. My immediate next door neighbor had lived in a house with me keeping bees with in plain view of his entire property. I mean, 3 boxes lined up against a wall. They lived there for, I think, 3 years before he realized I kept bees and panicked. And when he ran in the house, told his wife I was keeping bees. And she looked at him like he was an idiot and said, you're an idiot. They've been there ever since we moved in. So, but there are phobias. People will get a little excited. You do want to, obviously some people do have allergies. Hopefully those people who are deathly ill have an EpiPen or some way to manage it. I mentioned swimming pools. They're going to find them. They're going to be in there. Provide them a water source is your best defense, is to keep them out of the neighbor's pool. Flight barriers. A bee is going to exit a hive and typically go about 10 feet and then head out. Where the way my property sits is they have to fly over my house to get anywhere to forage. So they're going out and up. So there's no way they're gonna run into anybody or hit anybody. Some people will actually put the hives behind the privacy fence, so they have to go up. And then once they go up, they won't come back down until they get to where they're going. So it just creates a flight path overhead and keeps everybody happy. Keeps them out of your hair and out of your face. Just something to consider. That's another good rule. If you're urban beekeeping, out of sight, out of mind. Some people keep bees years and years and years, and no one in the neighborhood even knows, or cares. Because there's going to be wild bees. There always are. If they come from your hive, maybe, maybe not. You never know. Just be smart and be conscientious of your neighbors, because people have real phobias about it. Honey helps everything. Take your neighbor a jar of honey. Around July, just leave it on the front porch and say, if you're speaking terms, you might say hi and make sure they know where it came from. But the other thing is follow the law. You are required in the state of Arkansas to register your hive. There's a link here, and there's a link on our website as well. If anybody knows anybody that works in the state agri group, this form has got to be from the 1970s and hasn't been updated. And there's a little button on the website that says print, reset, and submit. None of that does anything. So you got to print the stupid thing, then fill it out, take a picture with your phone, and then email it to that apiary section. But you are asked to do that. I don't know if you know what quarter section and section number you live in. I do not, but I've been told by the people at the ag department, all they really want is your lat long. So,
The
I don't know where you're
GPS.
located. In fact, that's kind of the 3-mile rule and state regulations. So, again,
Just do a
back
pin,
to
look
just
up
follow the
Google.
law. Also,
Google
city
Maps,
ordinances,
the
most
pin,
cities,
it'll tell you
I
what the-
don't believe Rogers I know Fayetteville does. I don't know about other municipalities, but I know in Fayetteville, basically you can keep 3 or 4 hives in a quarter-acre lot, no problem. There are some offset requirements, as far as your property line is concerned, but just know what they are, and don't run afoul of the city. Plant board inspection, you are required to allow the state to inspect your hives when they choose to. So if you see somebody snooping around your hive, before you start pushing your Second Amendment rights, go make sure they're not in the state. And again, just consideration when you're locating them, you know, you need access, but also know they're not gonna just show up on your property. They just don't do that. I don't think. Where's Eddie? He left. But I haven't heard them just showing up. Usually there's a reason. You know, there could be foul brood in the area. There could be diseases circulating in a particular area, and they want to inspect and try to get a handle on it. So there are reasons. I've kept bees with a registered hive for 10 years in a little spot, never heard from the state. So, other than the guys I interacted with here at the club. So, I'm not going to go into that. We're going to save that for next time. I think we've got a little bit of time for questions and answers.
What's going on with Africanized bees?
Africanized bees, you know, they've been around forever. A lot of people say they're being bred out of, you know, they're mixing with all the other bees. What I will say, and what some of us will tell you, is just don't mail over your bees from anybody from Texas or Arizona. I say that. We got quite a few nukes from Texas last year, and we had them inspected in Texas. We brought them to Arkansas, set them up in a yard, and then we inspected them again after a week or so to test, forget the genetics for a minute, we wanted to test their behavior. So before we distributed them in the community, we tested their behavior. And you're always going to get that, but it's not a big problem. If you're ordering packaged bees, you know, me personally, I go for the Southwest states. Of course, it's been 100 years since I ordered bees, but
I get Arkansas bees.
there you go. Even better, just get local bees. But if you're doing packages, that's hard to get. Yeah.
Missouri bees,
Missouri's good.
Yep.
farther north.
Yeah. Sure.
On the website, on the apiary's website, they have pins of places where Africanized bees have actually been located. So,
Yeah,
and it's-
there's a map on the
What was the
state.
question then?
About bears in Newton County.
They love it. We have a place over there, and I don't have bees. You can't have bees around bears. You have to have an electric fence, you know, that's pretty substantial. It also helps if you can keep the the ground kind of wet, so they get a good charge when they come get it. There are people that do have over there, but it has to be pretty substantial. It's not the one electric wire. You know what a cattle panel is? You can electrify a cattle panels, you know, but no. You want them to get popped pretty good when they come in, and you need to have a very high powered
Yeah.
electric charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Like Dave.
Oh, thank you, Xavier. Is it not on? Okay, thank you. I wonder if you could please elaborate on the types of paint. The gentleman, the presenter earlier said exterior.
Yes. Very definitely, it needs to be an exterior grade. She's asking about what kind of paint to put on the
Something that's
outside.
good for
It
outdoors.
needs to be an exterior grade. You need to put the best paint that you can find on the outside of it, and put several coats on the outside of it. It will save you in the
How-
years to
how
come.
many?
Bees don't like you painting after they're in the boxes, you know, you can. You know, in the late evening on a warm summer day, after they've gone in, you can go out and slap on some paint real quick and it'll dry by in the morning. But it's better to use the best exterior grade paint you can use.
And don't paint these edges on the top or the bottom. Just
Stick
paint the
together.
sides.
Or nothing on the inside, the bees paint in.
And nothing on top, or your boxes will fuse
Stick
together.
There's no paint that's toxic?
I think there, I can't say it. She asked if there's any paints that are toxic. The bees don't eat the paint, the bees don't, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Now, the one thing that's kind of along with that, you don't build your hives out of,
Treated.
wood that's been preserved, you know.
No treated lumber.
You can build the stand that it sits on out of treated wood, but everything else is untreated.
Okay.
Because treated wood kills insects, and that's what bees are.
Right.
Yes, sir.
What about plywood?
I use plywood. In fact, where's my pretty top right here? You can use plywood. You just have to really put a lot of coats on the outside edge where it's going to be affected
Use
by water.
marine grade plywood, and Lowe's sells this stuff called outdoor projects, and it is junk. I decked a pontoon boat with it, and it cost me about $1,000.
Go ahead.
So use marine grade on it.
When, oh, sorry.
Hey, when you're working, sorry, when you're working your hive, do you have to put the frames back in order, or can you mix and match?
Well, you typically, if you're just doing an inspection, you want to put them kind of back the way you got them.
Okay.
But depending on what you're doing, like, I may
Sometimes.
be very specifically wanting to be manipulating my hive and moving things around. But typically you do, you want to put them back the way you got them. So as you pull them out, put them back in that same way, same orientation.
Unless there's a good
Supers will
reason.
always be brood, supers will always be supers.
Yes.
There's no mix and match.
Right, they'll put honey in the brood section as well for themselves, but yes.
And the same thing goes with the order. Even in the brood box, you don't want to, you try to put it back, the bees put it together the way they want it. And, yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Well, I was just really gonna quickly remind you guys to come back in 2 weeks and we'll have the second half of this class. So I know several people are leaving, and those that don't wanna hang around till the very end can just know now that we will be doing this again in 2 weeks.
And please stop by and see our local vendor, Hawkeye Honey, on your way out. They've got a lot of display equipment out there as well. And they've got good prices, I think as good as anybody in the area. So encourage everybody to give them a shot.
We'll still continue, we're gonna be here a while to answer questions. We really appreciate you all coming tonight, being a part of this.
We got another question back there, Earl.
Okay.
How is it you prevent swarming, or is that even a thing that can happen?
You remember when we get into arguments? That's one, but Ed kind of mentioned, if you have a weak hive in one place and a strong hive right beside it, if you alternate them, if you move them, then the order inside the hives change, and that can slow them down. Or you can do the split, what's called a split yourself, which is like the bees swarming, except you do it. Instead of they do it and you keep all your bees, you simply split the hive into two hives, which is what swarm is. But once you split them, they're not gonna swarm because you did the swarm for them. Okay. Somebody over here has one too. They'll make their own. Yes, ma'am.